Diva, unmute. Are you there? Maybe they didn't want to speak and didn't realize their speaker. Go ahead, Dr. Z.
Hi, thanks for having me speak. So first I wanted to say to Judge that I'm a new fan of yours. I'm so glad that I discovered you because I feel like there's a lot of truth and you have so much knowledge that I think we can benefit from. So I just wanted to let you know that. So I'm excited that you're here. I actually joined because I saw that you were in this room. And then the second thing I wanted to do is just preface some of the things that I'm going to say by just giving you a little bit of history about myself. So I lived in California for about 40 years of my adult life, spent 30 of those years in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I'm quite familiar with the Kamala Harris politics while I was out there. And I wanted to basically say that, the whole time that she was running for office in San Francisco and then alternately in California and so on and so forth. She only ever ran as an Indian woman. And the other thing that she added onto that resume was a Southeast Asian Indian woman, because the San Francisco population, the general Bay Area population, if you will, is very Asian heavy and very Southeast Asian heavy. And so she identified as those. Now, by way of technicality, I guess India is kind of sort of in Southeast Asia, but we just, like, people who are in the Southeast Asian community just don't consider Indians in Southeast Asia, if you will. But that's all she's ever ran as. So much like Donald Trump, I was shocked to see her running her campaign when she became, the VP nominee for Biden as a Black woman, because I had never heard that for the entirety that I was living in the Bay Area when she was running for office there, and then when she was running for office in California. Now, I'm an Asian woman. I'm also an immigrant. I lived in, a communist country for 9 years of my life before I came here to the United States. And candidly, I've actually never voted in my entire life. But this particular election is so important to me. And the reason it's so important to me is because when I look at Kamala Harris and her policies and what she's done to California, from as a prosecutor, as an attorney general, and then as a Senate, in terms of how she votes, on the Senate seat, and what policies, what programs she supported and put into place, it is very consistent with communists, or in many cases, the father of Marxism, Karl Marx. It's very consistent with Marxist/communist policies. And that's why I am so scared that she's actually on this ticket. I actually was not even paying attention to the politics until they put her on the ticket. And I went from not being a voter to now sending postcards, sending mail, making phone calls for the Trump campaign, to now volunteering to do poll watching and registering voters. And I'm dedicating like 2 months of my life just to do this, because that is actually how afraid I am. And, we can go into all of the details, but at the end of the day, like, what I would like for people in this particular group to think about is, like, think about the fact that she never got any votes, and that's because they knew they would never be able to get her through a primary, because her policies are so unpopular with the actual overall Democratic Party, right? So that's one. The second thing you want to think about is, like, this woman who is the least popular VP in the history of American history went from being so unpopular to now in the lead in most of the states. And then the third thing that you want to think about is, think about how quickly she raised money, right? She literally raised like $500 million, $500 million in like a little over a week, which is unheard of. So when you really put all of those things together, you can kind of come to the conclusion, it really doesn't matter which side you're on, you can come to the conclusion that she is bought and paid for, right? So the last thing I wanted to say was that I was watching a YouTube video, and there was an African American woman who was asked um, if she would vote for Kamala Harris, and she said no. And they asked her why, and she said because she's a culture vulture, meaning, and she explained it as in like she basically is a vulture. She came in here and she took away our Black culture and just made it hers. And now she's using that platform to run on. And this woman basically said, that's not okay with me. And so for me, I'm not trying to hate on Kamala because, I mean, when you think about it, right? I'm a woman, I'm in my 50s. I, have lived in the Bay Area. I would like to see someone like Kamala Harris succeed in terms of like her color and being a woman and just being a minority and being of like immigrant parents and all of those things. I would like to see someone like her succeed. But I would like to not see Kamala Harris succeed because she does not embody or support um, any of the things that would be beneficial, in my opinion, to the American people, and in particular to people of color and minorities like some of you guys and like myself. And I've seen that because I've been around her for 20 plus years, and I've just never seen anything that she's ever done that I can say is something that's a positive thing. And so when I think about Kamala Harris, I just think of her as a piece of turd that you can polish as much as you want and as much as you can, and you can have the best polish in the world, but at the end of the day she's still going to be a turd. So anyway, I just wanted to say that very quickly, and thank you guys for having me to speak.
Appreciate you. Well said, though. I appreciate everything that you said. That was funny at the end. It was like, she's a turd, but you said it so politely. Did you want to reply, Judge? You're muted. Just give him.
I enjoyed what I heard. Thank you, ma'am, for saying that. That's absolute reality, and that's what I've been trying to enlighten people about. We do not want to digress into a tyranny in this place. That woman has openly advocated restriction of speech. They keep talking this stuff that the ignorant don't get when she says the danger of misinformation. But the worst danger is not misinformation. That can be countered by better and more accurate information, perhaps, if people think it's more accurate. If you get a press that accepts its responsibility to be detached and somewhat impartial, at least in its reporting, if not in its editorialization, if you start dealing with the more information that is put out there and the more varied, the more people can apply their own minds to the process and develop logical, reasonable, rational, and analytical conclusions based on what they are getting exposed to, which prompts everyone to try and find more information to support their cause. We cannot have it in this country where information is restricted because it goes against somebody's particular cause. That is what the whole Constitution was designed to prevent. And that's why they restated it in the First Amendment. So I just look back 90 years ago to 1934. And if you go back and you really spend the time, instead of wasting it looking at television half the time, and take a look at what was going on in Nazi Germany, you will see the same thing that you're looking at right now. And people are always saying, how did they let that happen? How did the German people accept these monsters, these Nazis? Well, if you take a look around right now, you can see how and why, because what you have here is kind of I guess it's some kind of strange tranny morph, I guess. Adolf morphed into a woman or something. And her name is Kamala, which, by the way, is a Hindu goddess's name. It's not black. And the interesting thing is Adolf Hitler was talking about Aryans, Aryan supermen, blonde haired, blue eyed, and we still have Aryan Nation, Aryan Brotherhood, neo Nazis, and such like. But the truth of the matter is that anthropologically, what Kamala Harris is known as an Indo, I-N-D-O, Aryan. And I find it strange that the male Aryan Superman, Adolf, spreading that poison 90 years ago, has morphed into, I guess, the female real Aryan, morphing into somebody that is saying the exact same thing in 2024. And we better beware, because there's something that is very, very different about this election. And I can remember all the way back to when Eisenhower got elected the last time, because we had to pay attention to it in school. I can remember when Kennedy got elected and had the first debate with Nixon on TV ever, and I had to write a report on it. I was a freshman in high school. I can remember these things. And this is something entirely different. I have never seen anything like it. And much as one side may be acting like they hate the other, there are some rules that they do try to follow. These folk are following no rules at all. They are just out there by any means necessary. We don't give a damn. We're going to win. We don't care if we have to cheat. We're going to get our way, because what we have is more important than this mere republic that we live in. We're trying to spread it around the world, and Ukraine is helping us out. And we upset everybody around the world, where we put that flag with all the colors under the U.S. flag, and everybody knows what it stands for. And the other people are saying, hey, we don't play that. Why are you insulting us? But we do it anyway. And you see the school corridors blanketed with these rainbows. You see the White House lit up in rainbows. You see them forcing this down the Republic's throat. You see Waltz signing into order those things that got him the nickname Tampon Tim. Do we need a signal? Do we need somebody to come down and write it on high that that's what's going on? We need to wake up. But I pass the mic. Thank you, ma'am, by the way, for your remarks.
I want to ask Dr. Z. And I just followed you. It's because on your profile it says 52 immigrant PH from School of Hard Knocks, and I wanted to ask you about the migrant crisis. So were you born here, or you came
No,
here?
I wasn't born here. I came here when I was about 10 years old.
Legally,
Yes.
like the regular way.
Right. I can explain how I came.
Well, you can, and then too, I want to ask you your thoughts on this migrant crisis that we have going on.
Sure. So I'll just briefly explain how I came and how I think everybody should come. So when we were trying to come to the United States, we were so I'm a product of the Vietnam War. I'm from Laos, and I'm a part of an ethnic group of people called Hmong. It's spelled HMONG, and we were on the side of the Americans to try to help with the Vietnam War. And when the war ended, that's when, the Viet Cong came into our country. But, much to what Judge Brown was saying earlier, it didn't happen overnight, right? There was a lot of propaganda and stuff like that. But I came over. So what we did was we had to escape into Thailand. And then in Thailand, we applied to come to the United States for asylum. We went through a process. They fully vet you. Just because the main thing is that when you're trying to come over and you've been through a situation like that, they don't know if you're one of the good guys or if you're one of the bad guys trying to come in and infiltrate. So we filled out our application. They vetted us. They had to check all of the people that we were connected to, check what positions did our family serve, in the military, and so on and so forth, and do quite a bit of vetting. It took about a little over a year to go through the vetting process. And then once we went through that process, then we were given, the okay to come here to the United States. And when we came here, we had a family that sponsored us and helped us to acclimate into society. And so it was all very well oiled and coordinated. And the main thing that I want to point out is the vetting process. Now, the immigration situation as it stands today is a total mess. And the reason it's a total mess is because when people talk about immigration, you guys, I'm sure you've seen the numbers are like really weird, right? It's like you hear the numbers like 10 million, 11 million illegals. And then sometimes you hear the numbers like 25 million, sometimes it's 30 million. The reason why the number is so messed up is because it depends on how you look at immigration. So illegal just means they came through the border and they're not supposed to be here, but we let them stay. That's illegal immigration. And that's that $11 million or 11 million mark that you hear. The other 14 million to 18 million is an estimate because there are people that do not come in through the border. There are people that have been flown into the country through loopholes that Biden and Harris allowed. And then there are through those loopholes, which means that they don't get checked at the border. So that's an estimate. And then there's people that have, quote unquote, you can call them legally came into the country. There's a program that the Biden Harris administration put out called CHNV, which stands for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. And there's tons of people that have come in through that program. Now, there's still some argument as to whether that's legal or not. So when you put everything together, that's why you're getting an estimate number of 25 to 30 million people. Now, the issue that we all should have with that is that when you have a population of about 330 million people here in the United States, and you add roughly 25 to 30 million people to that population, what you've done is you've increased your population to about 10%, which is a lot to take on in a period of 3 years. And that's all of our tax dollars and stuff like that, right? So that's the issue with immigration that a lot of people don't understand is they just think it's a southern border issue. It's not just a southern border issue. It's a southern border issue. It's us giving and flying people in and not vetting those people. And then it's also us creating new programs and new loopholes for people to to enter into the country. So like the Haitian, discussion in Ohio, for example, right? Technically, all of those people that are there, they are there legally. Those are legal immigrants by default that they came in through this CHNV program. So you can call them legal, but are they really legal, right? Because we gave loopholes and stuff like that. So that's one issue. The other issue is that, most of you may not know, but we've spent $150 billion on immigration in the last 3.5 years that the Biden-Harris administration has been in business, right? And so the question we have to ask ourselves as a society is that if immigration continues, how much more are we as taxpayers going to be spending? Because we actually need that money, So that's how I feel about immigration, is to just kind of like educate yourself. For me personally, I hear people talk about, recently, Kamala Harris brought the whole abortion issue up and talked about Amber Thurman and how she died because of quote unquote bans and things like that. But what they don't want to talk about is all of the women, children, men, all American citizens who've either been raped, maimed, or killed by their loose illegal immigration and even legal immigration policies. So that's something else that we really also have to be concerned about. So it's not just a issue of safety. It's an issue of safety. It's an issue of infrastructure. Do we have the right infrastructure to be growing at 10%? And then it's the issue of finances, because we're financing all of this. And what is the net benefit to us as a society? I think the net benefit far does not outweigh the losses that we get from immigration at this point. So that's my 2 cents there. Now, if you don't mind, Dana, I just wanted to comment on some of the things that the judge said, because I have personal experience with this. So I want to move on to kind of talking a little bit about communism and what happened in my country and what happened in the places that I've studied communism. So the first thing that they do is they capture your institutions. When you think about institutions, for example, our press, like, I don't think there's anybody in this room that disagrees with me that our press is 100% captured, right? The second thing is the institutions. So it's things like the executive branch, the legislative branch, the DOJ, right? These are the three branches that are supposed to manage our government, if you will. But when you think about it, how did they capture the executive branch? Well, look at what Biden did in his first day of office. He signed like 71 executive orders, right? Look at the types of laws that they have passed since they've been in office, if you will. The legislative branch, most of our government officials today are corrupted in some way, shape, or form. The most recent discussion that they've had quite a bit is how come it is that these people on Capitol Hill make a roughly $140,000 to $170,000. Now, anybody who knows Nancy Pelosi knows that her maximum salary that she ever made in her lifetime is $170,000. This woman is worth about $130 million. How did that happen, right? And that's because she is, in history, I think they said that she has made the most successful stock trades in history. That's because she's cheating. And then we have all seen the DOJ and what they've done, not only to Donald Trump, but to Robert Kennedy. We've seen that. Now Elon Musk is being taken down. He's being investigated on like 4 or 5 different things because he decided to come out and support Trump. So we're seeing the DOJ being used as a weapon. Then you have all your alphabet agencies, your CIA, your FBI, your DHS, and so on and so forth. As Americans, ask yourself today, when you hear something about the FBI or the CIA or Department of Homeland Security and the activities that they've taken, how do you feel about the information that's been given you, right? So to me, these institutions have been captured at the higher level. There's still some level of operation, but they have been captured. Then I want to talk about how they've captured our schools, our colleges, our teachers, because if you look at all the children in the schools right now, and back to Judge's point about teaching about LGBTQ and stuff like that, read some of the materials that your children bring home. Look at some of the activities that they have at school, and so on and so forth. And you better get deep because they're hiding some of this stuff from you. Thank God my children are no longer in school, and then look at the colleges and how kids are so quote unquote woke these days, right? And then if you look at other things like your community centers, your churches, I'm raised Catholic, and just about a week ago, I saw a video of the Pope in Rome, basically saying that they don't know if they should endorse Kamala Harris or endorse Donald Trump, because they can't endorse Kamala Harris because she's for abortion, but they can't endorse Donald Trump because Donald Trump wants to deport immigrants from this country. Never in my life as a Catholic would I ever expect that to come from the Pope's mouth. So you can kind of
let me interject something right there, because it's funny he said that, and then because you said you had a question for the judge, that was a loaded question, but I do want him to answer some of it, and I need to get to other speakers. But if the Pope said that about immigration, but the country of Italy, they're very strict on having migrants come into their country. They tell them stop coming, and if you do come, you won't be admitted in. So it's funny that he's taking a stand of, well, Trump is anti-migrants, but the country that the Pope is in is anti-migrants as well. So,
yeah, I mean, he was making it like it was a moral dilemma for him, right? And to me, it's like, how is that a moral dilemma for you to just, we're not saying kill the migrants. We're saying, please send them back to their country. How is that a moral dilemma for you when it comes to abortion? Now, I personally I'm pro-choice, even though I'm Catholic, right? But so to me, it's like it doesn't matter where you stand on abortion, but you are literally the Pope and the go-to person
Well,
when
if
it
he,
comes.
I will say this, because he is the Pope, and then I'm gonna give it
Mhm.
over to the judge to comment. But because he's the Pope, if morally, religiously, he should not even be commenting on politics.
Exactly. And if he is commenting, it's pretty clear that he should just be against abortion because that's been the long-standing thing,
Yeah.
right? And so for him to say, "Oh, I have this moral dilemma because one person is killing children and the other person is deporting, immigrants," it's like those are not equal and those are not the same thing if you're the
Yeah.
Pope and you're thinking about it. So
So,
um
Judge, did you want to comment to? Well, what was your question exactly? Just
Oh,
answer.
I wasn't making the question. I was
Oh,
making the
okay.
point that this is what happened in our country is they propagandized by the press. They captured, the different schools, colleges, community centers, churches, any of the branches of government that was there. They captured all of that. And then the next thing that went is that, obviously, it much like what the judge said, how do you think what do you guys think happened with the people in Germany? What do you think happened with the people in China? It wasn't something that happened overnight. It is a very long process that they go through to switch you from kind of a republic for what we have to more of a communist country. And right now, the reason I'm getting involved in politics so quickly and investing all of my time and my energy and my money is because I'm seeing it. It is happening. If Kamala Harris gets into office in another 4 years, I promise you guys, we will not recognize America anymore. I mean, we
Yeah.
already not recognize it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Doctor, I want the judge if he wants to say something, and then I have to go to
Yep.
Josh El Hotep and Salai. I'm probably saying your name wrong, so correct me when it's your time to speak. So, did you want to say something, Judge, before I get to the other speakers?
Yeah, I want to add something to the mix, ma'am. I just followed you back, but Dr. Z, it's interesting. There are some legal things that I have not seen the press discuss. I've noticed Elon Musk has mentioned it, but not the press. Ordinarily, to get asylum, you have to go through an American embassy abroad and they quickly vet you because your life's in jeopardy. There's some political thing going on there and they have to get you out. The rule is if you're brought in where you have been granted this asylum status, you automatically become a citizen in 5 years. You don't have to go through the vetting process, the classes, the study, getting sworn in by a federal judge after you have learned the culture and the history and the politics and what the country is about. But since the president under the Constitution is also the chief diplomatic officer of the country, and the Constitution does not specify how this operates, but leaves it up to laws passed by Congress, what happens is that the president, the next president, could issue an executive order, pardon everyone that has got in here illegally, because it is a federal crime, pardon everyone that gave them sanctuary because that is technically a federal felony known as harboring a fugitive. And a fugitive, amongst other things, is defined as a person who has illegally entered the country. And after he does that, he can declare that they are entitled to asylum status. And that means that 5 years after the declaration, they can vote, they can do everything, they don't have to be vetted or anything. And that would completely alter the politics of the country with all of this fresh infusion of people who have not been vetted, have not dedicated themselves to doing what citizens do, and nobody knows why they're here. All of that can take place. And I imagine that would be one of the first things a Harris Waltz administration would do, would be to execute one of those executive orders like Biden did the first few days in office when he executed a bunch of them. Interestingly enough, Obama hardly executed any at all his first few months in office, but that's another story. But this is an insidious little plot. And you see, if you have all of these people who would alter the political dynamics within 5 years, who have not been required to study what the United States is about with its Bill of Rights and Constitution, they wouldn't know any better and wouldn't have anything to compare with when it comes to saying, oh, yeah, we'll go along with it. And that is one of the real dangers, and I'm waiting on the mainstream press to publish anything about that fact. So that's something else to think about.
Well,